Okay, we are recording. Welcome to Research Methods again, folks. Let me share my screen. The first thing I would like to show you is actually just following the discussion we had last week. I'm showing you my email, right? My emails, the emails I receive. I'm showing you my spam folder. I clear my spam folder almost on a daily basis, but today I didn't. So I have a bunch of emails there coming from what we discussed last week, predatory publishers and predatory journals. All of these, so I just put here, join as editor, current economics journal, new journal proposals. There is my name there from a place which doesn't exist anymore, School of Economic and Business Sciences. It's not really University of Pretoria, which is called Department of Economics. Dear Dr. Bittencourt, and then there is, the email starts by saying, these guys here, blah, 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 science, is an international publisher providing academic researchers. I never heard of this publisher before, right? And then there is a second paragraph. They say the purpose of this letter is to bring an exciting project to your attention and seek your interest for it. And then they are saying that they're going to create a major mega science journal entitled Current Economics, in bold, right? In bold. And then, because I don't know this publisher, and I don't know the Nobel laureate professor, this and that fellow, this is probably a fellow of the Royal Society. Well, I don't know these guys. They are certainly not Nobel laureates in economics, right? So I don't know those chaps. So what I did was, as for the sake of this lecture, I went to Bill's list. Remember Bill's list, and I just typed the name of the publisher there. Let me actually go back. Let me stop sharing and let me share a different screen now. I went to Bill's list and I just typed the name of the publisher, and there it was, right? It's there. Okay, so this is just to give you an example, folks, of how these guys operate and how these guys approach people. They use a simple algorithm to get your email from the web, and then they keep bombarding people with these silly emails. So shall we get started with what we want to discuss today? Let me share a different screen now. Which one? This one. There we go. Okay, folks, we stopped last week here. We had this discussion about the role of the supervisor and, well, what the supervisor should do and what the supervisor should not do. We were just about to start the discussion about the research proposal. I think the research proposal is, well, it gives you, well, it's part of your assessment, and it's because it's part of your assessment, it's not only in practical terms, it's important, but also your research proposal will help you to put your paper together, because it will lay the foundation of your paper. So what is this research proposal about? One thing which I think is important, not only for this course, but for the other one that I happen to teach. I don't know how it happens to the other instructors you have, but for me, folks, I think it's. Sorry about that, but I have to move my laptop a little bit. Not at home. It's always. I think it's always a good idea to follow my instructions. So if I say that something should not, or I put there must not be longer than 2,000 words, I really mean it, right? Or 5 or 6 pages, I really mean it. Okay. If I'm putting something, I'm giving you instructions, I think it's a very good idea for you guys to make sure that you follow the instructions I'm giving you. They are there for a reason. If you don't follow, the first thing I look when I receive your stuff is whether you followed my very basic instructions. If you haven't, it's not a very good beginning, right? So about the research proposal, you need a research proposal, and it must not is in bold, it must not be longer than 2,000 words. I really mean it, right? It's not an empty threat in the game theory sense. It must not be longer than 2,000 words, or which, depending on the font you use, 5-6 pages, excluding appendices, footnotes. Footnotes are not a good idea, but we are going to talk about footnotes in a few moments, tables and references, and should address the following. So by now you probably have an idea what your research proposal should address, what your proposal should be about. Your research proposal is, well, it's what is the purpose of this paper of yours? What is your research question? What is the hypothesis that you are about to test? Okay. And we have seen by now in the other course, we have seen four papers, 4 professional papers, and I have showed you it's the first thing is the research proposal, right? What is that your paper is about? So you have to tell the reader in your proposal what is the research question, what is the hypothesis, and you are testing only one hypothesis, right? It's a simple paper. You are not testing 250,000 different hypotheses. You are testing one hypothesis, right? It's an honors paper. This is not a PhD chapter or a PhD paper. It's an honors paper, right? So what the first one, what is the purpose of your paper? What is your research question? So let's assume that your research question is the effects of inflation on economic growth in South Africa, right? So that's a research question. It doesn't matter whether it's at this point, it doesn't matter whether it's an exciting or a boring research question, but that is the research question of your paper. Okay, or the research question can be the effects of automation or the effects of robots on the labor share in South Africa, right? That's a research question. Or the effects of in the lecture that we had on Tuesday, someone asked me about an example of South African superstar firm, and I didn't know. I couldn't think of any. But then I was thinking maybe Discovery Health is a superstar South African firm, right? Maybe. But we would have to look at the data of Discovery Health. How much Discovery Health spends on technology? I think I bet quite a lot. And what is the number of people they have doing this or doing that, right? But Discovery Health could be an example of South African superstar firm. Okay. So, and then, okay, you have a research question, and as I said 2 minutes ago, at the time, it didn't matter whether it was a boring or an exciting research question, but now you have to motivate your research question, right? You have to tell the reader, why is this research question interesting? Why is this research question important? Or why is it an important or worthwhile question? Why is it interesting? And in science, right? In science, we usually, most of the time, in fact, all the time, we avoid questions where only one answer is interesting. In science, there is no good, no bad, or doesn't work, right? Even if you get results which are not statistically significant, what really matters for you here is your ability to put a paper together, and not the ability to make sure that your results are statistically significant. If your results are not statistically significant, then so be it. But your paper is properly formatted, your paper has the right format. You did a good job in collecting a data set, you did a good job in putting this data set together, you did a good job in estimating some decent regressions, and you did a good job in interpreting the results. Okay, whether they are, if they are 0 or different from 0, well, it doesn't matter, because this is just an empirical exercise. Okay. So, and then let's assume that your research question is the effects of inflation on economic growth in South Africa. Then you have to tell the reader, why is this an interesting research question? Is it because inflation tends to be high rates of inflation tend to be bad news for the economy because it illustrates that a particular central bank, I'll be with you, it indicates that a particular central bank is losing control or it's succumbing to government pressure. Should the research question be based on one topic, or we can collaborate various topics in one research question, obviously making sure to stick to the main research question. Make it as simple is good, right? Simpler is better, right? It's one research question. Okay, make sure that it's a clear cut research question and that you are fairly familiar with the research question, and that you are able to motivate this research question. Okay, one research question. Do not overcomplicate things, folks. Okay, let me close this. But thanks for the question, because then it allows me to emphasize even more what this thing is about and what this thing is not about. Okay. So your research proposal is, oh, by the way, but I'm going to tell you more about this later on. So you go straight, what is the research question, right? The research question is this, and that, right? And then you motivate this research question. Inflation and economic growth is an important subject, not only because important people in our, it's an enduring subject in economics, not a lot of important people, papers in top journals were published in that, investigating that particular research question. Top names in our profession have written papers on that subject throughout time. And it's also important because it's in a developing country like South Africa, where the central bank is always under political pressure, right? There is always a sort of debate surrounding the central bank, which we call here the Reserve Bank, right? There is always a political, ideological debate surrounding the independence of the Reserve Bank, right? There is always someone trying to sell the idea that the SARB shouldn't be as independent as it is, right? So it's a worthwhile question for a number of reasons, but it's your research question, so you have to come up with ideas in order to motivate this research question of yours. Okay. And again, you have seen, folks, all the 4 papers that we are covering the other course on Tuesdays. You have seen that all those guys, they motivate, and I always show you, all those people, they motivate their research question. They have a clear-cut research question, and all of them, and they are top people. They don't even have to bother about motivating their research question, but all of them take their time to motivate the research question. Okay. Let me drink some water here. And then what else? We have to put in this research proposal. Well, the literature. You need to briefly review the literature. What past research has shown, and then we are back. You have to recall the 3 or 4 top papers, recall them, written by the 3 or 4 leaders and published in the 3 or 4 top journals in your particular subject, in the subject that covers your research question, right? You do not have, especially in your research proposal, right? You must not review 35,000 different papers, right? No, I really want you to follow what is written there, okay? You have to go for the best. My job here is to make sure that you get into your heads, right? That science, we have to learn from the best, okay? We really have to stand on the shoulder of giants, okay? There is no point in finding, getting an interesting research question, motivating your research question nicely, and then you realize that you are going to base your paper on an obscure paper published in the South African Journal of Economics back in 1978. Okay, because nobody knows, I don't know what the South African Journal of Economics was actually publishing back in 1978. Recall the conversation we had, I don't remember whether it was in this course or on the other course, about how science is done and the importance of science to be the importance of globalization in the scientific market. And South Africa was not globalized, didn't have a globalized scientific market back in 1978. Okay. Or you cannot base your paper on a paper which was published by a predatory journal or a predatory publisher. Okay, that's not good science. That's not the best. And if you do that, you are not doing the best. You are not following my instructions. And if you don't follow my instructions, the mark you get is going to be a small number. Okay, and you don't want to get small numbers. Right? So yes, so literature, what past research, you have to briefly review the literature. What past research has shown, recall the 3 or 4 top papers written by the 3 or 4 top leaders published in the 3 or 4 top journals. And what are the weaknesses and gaps in the literature? Right, as I said to you, I gave you the example last week. If there is a great paper on this subject of yours that you really like, that you are really motivated about, and this paper uses, let's say, international data. They use data from all the countries in the universe. But you are not interested in all countries of the universe. You are only interested in sub-Saharan Africa, for instance. Or you are only interested in the SADC countries. Or you are only interested in South Africa or in Zimbabwe, I don't know, in Botswana, right? So it's a different sample, right? You are using a different sample. So, but then you have to emphasize what is that your work will add to this literature. Okay. And remember, when you are reviewing a paper, what is really important? Well, everything that is really important, you know where to find it, right? You find all the important information about a paper in the abstract, the research question, the data and methods that these guys are using, and the results or the findings. That's what you need, right, folks? That's what you need. What else you have to put in your research proposal? Sections, right? So this is section 1, 2, 3. This is section 4. Then you have to talk about your method. What is your method? Well, your method is going to be based, it depends on the dimension of your data, right? So most of you will be doing empirical papers. Most of you will be downloading. That's what is expected from economics and econometrics students. We'll be downloading a data set from the web, and it's great fun. I showed you our work in data last week, right? It's great fun. It's a great exercise, and if you want to become a professional economist, you really must know that. So your method is based on the sort of data that you have. If you are doing only national time series for South Africa, aggregated macro data for South Africa, then your method is based on time series, right? If you are doing a bunch of African countries over time, then your method is based on final data. And you can say a couple of sentences. You can write a couple of sentences about final data or about time series, whether you are going to be testing for, if it is time series, whether you are going to be testing for co-integration or not, or in final data, whether you'll be doing this or that. That is the stuff that you are learning with Matthew, right? But you have your method is depends on the sort of data that you are using, and the sort of data that you are using depends on the research question that you are asking, right? The method, or how you do it, right? How you conduct yourself, so how you go about to answer this research question of yours. And then you have to tell the reader what is the sort of data set that you'll be using, right? Is it a time series? Is it a panel data for how many countries? So if it is a panel data over time, so you have to explain. So I'll be using to explain, to try to, in order is always a good way to start a sentence. In order to answer this research question of mine, I'll be using a data set comprising 48 African countries between the period during the, I don't know, 1990-2020 period. So it's a panel, right? And then and the variables I'll be using are these, and that, and these variables come, the data sources are these, and that. So you have to explain your data, right? Ideally, also you show your data. Okay, you plot some graphs. Some students for the research proposal, they will, the students doing a good job and the students getting a good mark, they will start collecting their data right after this lecture, right? They will start thinking about their research question right after this this lecture. So the good student, the students who will get a decent mark will already have, by the deadline, so by the deadline of this proposal, they will already have their data sets, and they will show me their data set. How do they do that? Well, they do that in the same way that those professional guys that we are seeing on Tuesdays do, plotting graphs, right? You can also get your descriptives, and you have to comment on those things, right? And in this course also we are going to be seeing a couple of papers, and we are going to see that just to emphasize once more that the couple of papers that you'll be seeing, they also they explain their data, their method, and they show their data. Okay, and all of them are top papers published in top journals. Okay. Sources, you have to show your data. I put method again. By that I mean the specification. Remember also that all the papers that we have been seeing, they show the equation that they will be estimated. Okay, And you also have to show the equation that you'll be estimating. Even if that equation is not the final one, folks, everything is preliminary for the research proposal, but you must convince me that your research proposal is coherent and solid, and that you know what you're talking about. Okay. Lousy research proposals, they don't go far. Okay. But my job here and my job is a social contract. I have a job. Make sure that you have all the information necessary required for you to write a decent proposal, but you also have to do your job on your side. So we have a social contract, right? And you can even say, you can even mention some possible problems or problems. Problems in research is not like a problem in life, right? A problem in research is something that you have to think and come up with a decent explanation. Okay, you don't really need a solution for a problem in science. What you need is a decent explanation. Okay. Let's see what else. Okay. Let me stop sharing. Questions? Comments? Suggestions? All good? All clear so far? When you will be receiving the list of topics? Oh, wait, because a lot. Wait. Let me go back to the. Okay, what I'll be doing probably next week, I will give you the list of topics that my colleagues are willing to supervise. Okay, but that's not cast on stone. They have particular research interests, right? And I'm sure you have your research interests. And as I said last week, it's important that you guys approach someone, right? You can shop around. At this stage, we have time. But at this stage, you can literally shop around. There is a market for supervisors out there, right? You have your own preferences. Sometimes your preferences. So, for instance, you are interested in economic growth, and you were taught economic growth by someone last year. So this is the person who taught you economic growth last year is your obvious choice. But maybe she's not interested in your particular topic. But then nevertheless you go and you talk to her, and you try to convince her that this is the topic that you want. Maybe she will buy your topic. Maybe she will just say, no, this topic is not really in my area. I'll be with you. I'll be willing to compromise a little bit here and there, or I don't want to compromise. Here is what I want you to do. Okay. So let me see. There is one new message there. What do you mean by even though they are not from UP? The last question, Pulitzer. Even though they are not from UP, what do you mean by that? Now, your supervisor must be from UP, right? If that's the question. Go ahead. There is a question. Go ahead. Question? No. So your supervisor must be from the list that I gave you last week, which is in the lecture in the notes, right? You have to go to a particular web page where there is the list of people there, and I think they will be willing. Those are the people who are available for supervision. Okay. Okay. Yeah, once we finish the set of lecture notes that we are doing now, probably today or next week, then I'll be giving you the topics. But as I said, go to the web page that I put in the lecture notes. There is a link there, and see. You already know a bunch of people. Those of you who did your undergraduate at UP in economics and metrics, you already know some people, right? You already have an idea of what you want to do, and therefore you already have an idea of those who can help you, right? So in a way, those of you, it's always like that. Those of you who did your undergraduate in economics at UP, you have a little bit of advantage over others, but disadvantage is if you don't make good use of this, it's not going to take you very far. And the others, you already know 3 people. Maybe you did your undergraduate at the University of, I don't know, at the MIT, right? Maybe you studied at MIT and now you are in South Africa for some reason and you decided to do your honors at Pretoria, so you don't know anyone. So go to the website that it's in the lecture notes. Go to the website and take a look at the names. So if you are interested in monetary economics, there is no point in spending time looking at the profile of someone doing game theory. Okay. But we are going to do that very soon. Are you also supervised and also you do research on the topic that any other question or comment? All good? All good. If I am in that page, then you already have your answer, right? All good? Can we continue? Yeah. Okay. Okay, folks. Let me share my screen. Okay. Let me share my screen again. There we go again. The paper, this paper of yours that you have to do. Never done it before, first time. And you've done a lot of, you had a lot of assessments in your student life based on MCQs, right? And they don't really prepare you for an essay, do they? No, not at all. Anyway, now it's time to do something different. So now it's time, if you want to become a professional economist, to write a paper, or you can also call this a report or an empirical essay or an article, whatever. But we are going to call it a paper, right? To be more professional. Also, at honors level, it's the moment that you must acquire the right jargon in economics. So your paper must not be longer than 10,000 words, excluding appendices, footnotes, tables, and references. So 10,000 words is already a long stretch. It's long, so it must not be longer. That not should be in bold, right? Than 10,000 words at all, ever. Recall, the more you write, the more mistakes you make. Okay, so go to the point. The whole thing here is go to the point. You need a clear research question, clear motivation, data set, method, and your results. Go to the point. You are not writing a novel. You are writing a paper. Things you must bear in mind about your paper. What is the central result of your paper, or the central contribution of your paper? Result and contribution are in bold, right? You must, in the abstract, in the introduction, in the conclusion again, You must tell the reader what is that you find all the time, right? How is that you add to the literature that you reviewed? What is your central contribution, right? Readers want to know your basic result as soon as possible, right? Readers, and by readers, I mean your supervisor and the external examiner. It's not going to be a bestseller, folks, right? Readers are very impatient. They can always go and do something else, especially now, right? Especially now when there is no monitoring of what they are doing, okay? Especially now. Make sure that you grab the attention of your reader from the beginning, okay? This is not a novel that you are writing. It's a paper. It's a paper, but even a paper can be exciting, can be interesting. It depends on you, okay? We have to use the newspaper style. That is to say, start with what is important. The punchline of your paper must be right at the beginning, right? When you read a newspaper, when you read the news, right? If you read the New York Times, if you read the BBC, the CNN, right? Or the Washington Post, if you read a decent news outlet, everything that is important is right at the beginning. Everything coming in the second paragraph is already bullshit. Okay, it's already bullshit. So use the newspaper style, that is to say, start with what is important. The punchline must be right at the beginning of your paper. It must be triangular. Your paper is triangular. You are not writing a novel, right? At all. Really, no. At all, okay? Good writing requires three things: simplicity, clarity, and unity. Do not overcomplicate things. There was a question at the beginning, right? There was a question at the beginning about having 1 or 2 or 3 or 500 different research questions or different hypotheses. No, your paper has only one research question. You are testing one hypothesis, right? It's simple is beautiful. Simpler is better. It must be clear, right? You must strive for clarity. Do not try to sound clever. Do not use complicated words. And we are going to see more of this as we move along today. Do not use all complicated words. And I'm going to jump a little bit ahead here. If you are talking about unemployment, you call unemployment unemployment. You do not call unemployment lack of jobs or lack of economic growth or lack of opportunities or lack of prosperity. You call unemployment, you are consistent, you must be coherent. You do not right click on words, right, to find a similar word for unemployment. You do not do this in science, right? You must be clear on what you are talking about. And unity is about being coherent, right? When you write all papers, all books, everything are divided into paragraphs. A paragraph in itself tells a story, right? A paragraph must hang together, folks, all the time. A paragraph has a beginning, and there is something in the middle, and then there is an end, even a paragraph, okay? And your paper is going to be a collection of paragraphs, okay? What is the structure of this paper? Well, we have seen some papers by now in macro, right? So you kind of already know the structure, but let's assume the null hypothesis, right? And that you don't know anything. No internet access. Okay, guys, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Because I think I lost my connection here. Can you? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, I'm sorry about that, folks. So let's try to do it as soon as possible because this load shedding thing is playing havoc all over the place. Sorry about that. Let's continue. Let me share my screen again. Okay, okay. So what is the structure of this paper of ours, right? You kind of already know the structure of those papers that we have seen in macro, but let's assume that, let's assume the null hypothesis. Let's assume that you don't know anything, that you have never seen a paper in your life before. So the structure of the paper is simple and clear. There is an abstract, right? There is an introduction. And in the introduction, you can also review your literature, but you, or alternatively, you can have a different section where you review your literature. Then there is another section where you talk and show, talk about your data and you show your data. We are going to go into detail as we move along. And then there is a section where you explain your method, which depends very much on the dimension of your data. And then there is a section where you present and discuss your results. And finally, there is the conclusion. Okay. You can also have appendices and then the references. And please, 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 in bold, folks, 3 times in bold, avoid those fluffy, tacky covers. No, you start, your paper must look exactly the same as those papers that we are seeing in macro, and also like the papers that we are going to see in a couple of weeks' time in here, right? I don't need covers. I just need your paper. I need the content of your paper, okay? Before anything, your paper needs a title, which must be as descriptive of your work as possible, simple and clear. If you are doing inflation and economic growth in South Africa, the title of your paper should be, must be, is going to be the effects of inflation on economic growth in South Africa. Okay. As descriptive, simple, descriptive, and to the point as possible, simple and clear. And then comes the abstract. In the abstract, we are talking about 100 and 150 words. You tell the reader your central result, what is that you find, or your contribution. So we find in this paper, I find that higher rates of inflation are detrimental to economic growth in South Africa. So that's what you find. Okay, always inflation tends to be inflation is detrimental to economic growth. Always in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in Brazil, in Argentina, in Australia, in Zambia, in Russia, always. So it's a kind of a no-brainer. Okay. In the abstract, you must be as concrete as possible. You must be concrete. You have to tell the reader what you find, your result. In essence, in the abstract, you must tell the reader what and why you do something, your research question, how you do what you do, the data and the method that you use, and what you find, your results. So we are not talking about more than 5 sentences, right? And you have seen the abstracts of the papers that we are covering in macro, and you are going to see more abstracts of the papers that we'll be covering here. Okay. Moving to the introduction. The introduction is of paramount importance. The abstract is very important, right? If I get a paper to read, and if the abstract is not clear and concise, if I don't get what I need from the abstract, it's already a signal what is coming, right? So if someone cannot even write a good abstract, imagine what's going to happen in the introduction, right? In the introduction, you tell the reader what and why, what you do, which is essentially your research question, and why. You have to motivate that research question, right? Motivation, motivation, and motivation. How you do things, data and method again, and what you find, your results. Bear in mind, folks, that essentially in the introduction, you have to pretty much repeat what has already been said in the abstract. But now you have you don't have to constrain yourself to 150 or 200 words. You have a little bit more words too. You can elaborate a little bit more on your research question, and you can motivate more your research question. Motivate you can spend more time talking about your data and method and your results. You tell the reader your central result, and right after you tell the reader your central result, you also tell the reader what is your contribution, right? What is that you are contributing to this literature. And you also, folks, you must tell the reader what is the actual theory, although all these papers are going to be empirical, right? But even an empirical paper must have some economic intuition, and that's what I mean by having a theory, right? If you are talking about inflation and economic growth, or lack of infrastructure and economic growth, right? Lack of electricity, right? And economic growth. You must have a theory, right? You must tell them what is this theory. Well, if we don't have electricity, we cannot grow because of this and that. Because if we don't have electricity, we cannot teach online during this pandemic, for instance, right? And you cannot read at night. You cannot go to shops, cannot open. Only big shops, only large conglomerates will be able to buy generator and stay open. Small businesses will collapse, and all dynamic economies, they rely on the small businesses. Even in the United States, there are small businesses everywhere. Microsoft was a small business once in its lifetime. So yes, you need a theory, right? You need to explain what is the economic intuition and what are the predictions coming from this theory, right? Maybe if you don't have electricity, if in this case, if ESCOM doesn't provide, is a monopoly, doesn't provide us with electricity or power, maybe it's good, right? Maybe we are going to grow faster because of this or that. It's not plausible, but maybe there is a theory out there. There are all sorts of theories out there nowadays, right? So you have to tell the reader what is the prediction, what are predictions coming from this mental model that you have. Recall, there is no empirical paper without theory, right? So you have to come up with some economic intuition, some economics. Right behind me, there is a theory, right? There is a very simple theory. It's supply and demand. It's used to explain a lot of things, Okay? And in the introduction, you can always avoid the roadmap. That is usually towards the very end of the introduction. There is the roadmap, which says in section 2 we are going to do this, in section 3 we are going to do that, in section 4 we are going to do that. Nobody reads that shit. So you can essentially avoid that paragraph. But some people like that paragraph because they feel clever with that paragraph. But if you are a student working with me, you are going to cut that paragraph. What else? 5-6 pages are usually more than enough for an introduction. So again, the reader wants to know what and why you do what you are doing, the research question and the motivation for your research question. How you do things, the data and the method, and what you find, your results. Simplicity, clarity, and unity. If you follow that second bullet point, it's simple, it's clear, and it's coherent, right? That's how we write in science. It doesn't matter whether we are talking about biology, economics, psychology, physics, maths, doesn't matter. That's how we write in science. It must be coherent. Let me stop here to see if there are questions, comments, suggestions. All clear? All clear, folks? Yeah. Okay. Okay. It's always clear at this stage. It's always clear, always crystal, right? Until time comes and then things don't get as crystal clear as you thought. Let me share. Okay. Are you going to be given the output? Are we going to be given the output? Is this output? What do you mean, Johnson? What do you mean by are we going to be given the output? Okay, think about this question, and we can come back to this later on. Let's continue there. Let me share again. Then after you do that introduction, you can have a different section, right, where you review the literature. But as I said before, alternatively, I usually review the literature in the introduction, right? But it's up to you, folks. You can review the literature in the introduction, or you can have a section or even subsection where you review the literature. Just a couple of sentences on each paper. Remember what you need to review a paper. You need to find out what is the research question of a paper, what is the data and method that the paper uses, and what is the results, the findings of a particular paper. So you can do that in 2 sentences, right? Maybe 3 sentences. Okay? Short sentences also. So you can do that in 3 sentences. So you're going to review all these 3 or 4 top papers. Recall the 3 or 4 top papers published by the 3 or 4 top guys and published in the 3 or 4 top journals in your subject. So it's really something to the point. But towards the end of this literature review, you have to tell me, and you have to tell the reader, how is that you add to this literature that you are reviewing, right? What is your contribution? What is that you do differently from the 3 or 4 papers that you are reviewing? Okay, you have to tell the reader how is that you are, otherwise it's just copy and paste, right? So you have to tell the reader, oh, we add to this literature because we are using a different data set. We are using an innovative data set, a brand new data set. Usually that's the contribution, right? It's not the research question. The contribution is not the research question. The contribution is not the method. You've seen, we are seeing papers, top papers, and we can see, folks, that they use simple methods, right? Methods which people in the US and in the UK, they learn in the 2nd year, which is OLS. Okay. So usually the contribution is the data. So last Tuesday we saw a paper on robots, if I remember well, and the use of that sort of data is the research question is quite innovative, right, for these guys, and the data is also innovative. Okay. In your case, you are going to copy and paste a particular research question that has been around for some time, because this is just an honors paper, but you have to tell the reader, the difference here, my contribution here is that I do this for, I'll be with you, I do this for South Africa, and it has never been done for South Africa before. Let me go to chat. The introduction is like an abstract, but with, yeah, absolutely. The introduction is like an abstract, but with more details. That's absolutely right. Okay. And I don't want to jump, but I will jump. And the conclusion is also just like the abstract, that is like the introduction, with using a different past, a different tense, right, in the English language. But introduction is like an absolute, but yeah, okay, thanks. Okay. Remember, your readers are interested in what you do, right? The readers, we're talking about two readers, right? As I said, it's not going to be a bestseller. You're not going to make any money out of this. You're not going to hit the shelves of exclusive books or Blackwell's in London. It's really only two people, and they are not even paying to read that. So it's not a bestseller. But nevertheless, you have to do it properly because it's your career. If you want to become an economist, a professional economist, that is the year, that is the moment that you are going to acquire the necessary skills to do well in your profession. Only then you briefly review the literature. What you do comes always first, right? What you do, your research question, why is your research question interesting, your data and methods and your results, always, all those things come first. They come before your literature review. Then you review the literature, and then you tell the reader after you review this literature, how is that you add to this literature. When you do this literature review, you must be polite with previous researchers. Don't say that they are all wrong and that you are going to solve all problems in the literature. That's not how science works. All right? So you must be polite. You don't have to review every single paper that has been published in your topic. Recall the 3 or 4 top papers by the 3 or 4 top leaders who publish in the 3 or 4 top journals. That's what I'm looking for. That's what we are looking for. A sub bullet point there: papers published in the Journal of Economic Literature, the Journal of Economic and the Journal of Economic Perspectives. They are 2 journals of the American Economic Association. They are examples of thorough reviews of the literature of a particular subject, right? Those are very good. Those are very good journals which publish excellent papers in a particular subject. It's excellent for you to go there and see those papers. But your paper is not a thorough review, okay? The point of your review is to set your paper against the 3 or 4 top papers by the 3 or 4 leaders who publish in the 3 or 4 top journals. You have to set yourself, you have to compare your paper, right, which used South African data. You have to compare yourself with Professor full of shit who published a paper using an international data set. Okay, and then you have to tell the reader why is that, what is that makes South Africa interesting to deserve a paper. All right, maybe let's say that this is a paper on fertility rates, on what determines the number of kids that we decide to have, right? And the South African context, given the policy of apartheid, makes South Africa interesting because Black people and white people, they had different incentives, right, when deciding the number of kids they would have, right? Some people were precluded from getting particular jobs in the labor market, so in that would probably have an effect on the number on fertility choices. So you can always, that's the sort of thing that we are expecting, right? You are going to tell, if you are using South African data to replicate a paper which used international data, you have to tell the reader what is in the South African context that makes South Africa an interesting study case. Okay. After the abstract, introduction, and literature review, most readers of your paper are already feeling, understandably, a bit drowsy and thinking of getting a cold one. That's what I'm thinking of doing right now, right? I'm here in Cape Town, and there are very good pubs around. There is this pub not far from here called The Toad, right? And they do a good job in terms of beer, right? Okay. Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me and can you see me? Because I think I lost connection. Thanks. Yes, yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm back. I'm back. So let's try to keep moving. Okay, thank you. Yes, now we can. Okay. Okay, let's share my screen again and let's keep moving. Okay, folks, after the abstract introduction and literature review, most readers are already feeling understandably a bit drowsy and impatient and thinking of getting a cold one. So you have to do something interesting quickly to grab their attention. So move straight into the empirical work, right? You have now to describe your data set, sources of your variables, of your data set, or broadly speaking, the source of your data set, specifically the source of your variables, right? Some variables will come from the World Bank, other variables will come from the IMF, other variables will come from, I have no idea from where. So you have to give the idea, you have to give the reader this sort of information. It's important, right? The sample size, but do it quickly, especially if it's an off-the-shelf data set. Well, what is an off-the-shelf data set? Well, it's a data set that is already there, ready for you to collect. You are not collecting the data set yourself. You are not running a particular survey in Kaelicha, for instance, and asking people this or that. You're not. It's not an original data set. So all of you will be using data sets which are already there. Okay. They are there, just like the ones I showed you last week, right? There are these data sets aggregators. You're going to go there, you're going to download your data set. Usually they come from the bank or from the fund. You have to tell the reader about those things. You must really include a table with the descriptives. Remember the papers that we have been seeing, descriptive statistics, the means, the standard deviations, and the statistical correlations. And every time you include a table in your paper, you must talk about your table, right? You must talk about all the pictures and tables in your paper. You cannot just copy and paste those things there and expect that the reader will understand them. Right? No, you must talk about those things. You must spend a couple of paragraphs explaining what's going on, right? Graphs, right? You have to, it's a nice way to show the data, right? Your main variable, let's assume that your main variable is economic growth. And your main explanatory variable for economic growth is an index for quality of institutions, right? So you show your time series or your panel the panel variation of your main variables, the main dependent and the main independent variable. You can also use maps. Maps are being more and more used, right, nowadays. Maps are nice. I think Matthew will talk to you. I will show you one of my papers which use a map, right? So those are all nice ways of showing the data. You have to talk about them too. Okay, so again, every time you show your data in any different way, using a graph, the maps, or the descriptives, you must comment on those things. Okay. Then you have to describe next section, right? You have to describe and motivate your method. Remember that you are not writing a textbook on econometrics, right? That is, do not copy and paste fancy equations from your metrics textbook. It's not what you need to do here. It's not what I expect you to do here. So go to the point quickly. So if it is time series, you are going to tell the reader that you are going to use time series. And that within time series that you are going to use, you are going to test, for instance, for cointegration. What is cointegration? You might be asking me. Well, cointegration is something that hopefully Matthew will be covering with you, but cointegration, when two variables are cointegrated, that means that they tend to move together, right? They are co-integrated, right? So go to the point quickly. Avoid too much textbook material in your paper. Your paper is not the place for copying and pasting textbook material, right? We are seeing in macro, and we are going to see here also professional papers, and those papers do not have textbook material, right? They explain the method or the methodology. I prefer the word method. And why is that I prefer the word method? Because it's shorter than methodology, and it's essentially the same word, okay? So those papers, those professional papers, and your paper is the first professional paper that you are writing. Must avoid textbook material. Your paper is not the place for textbook material. You explain the method, you tell the reader what method you are using and why, without copying and pasting textbook material, because that's not how it's done. Tell the readers, specifically now, tell the readers why, given your data set, why you are using, for instance, panel data methods, right? That's what it means explaining your method. Report the main result and then follow it with tables and graphs and maps that give intuition to the of the main result. Robustness checks also are useful to minimize criticism, but after the main baseline result. Okay. Conclusion of the paper must be short. As in life, we only die once, not twice, and ideally the end is short and sweet. Okay, so the conclusion must be short and sweet. Remember, the reader wants to know your facts, not your opinions, right? Your paper is based on data, on facts. Although I think everybody here agrees that poverty is really bad, right? We don't want to see poor people anymore, especially because we know how to end poverty, but we don't want to. But that your personal opinion is unimportant. What people want to know are your facts, the results of your data analysis, not your opinions, not your personal opinions. Okay. You can include a short summary of, in the conclusion, you include a short summary of what you do, a research question, and your contribution. But recall that you have already done that in the abstract and introduction, so avoid repetition. But you have to do that again. Okay. You might also acknowledge the limitations in bold of your paper, right? But do not stress the limitations too much, right, folks? Because otherwise the reader will start thinking that your paper is very limited. So, but it's always nice to tell the reader that your paper is not the final word on the subject. It's really the beginning of this research idea that you had. There are much more things that can be done, and they will never be done, but you write that they will be done. And that your paper, because your paper is using data, let's say from South Africa covering a particular period, because there is no data easily available for the period before 1994. So there is a sort of limitation there. So this is the sort of thing that we write as a limitation, right? So it would be wonderful to have data from 1910 all the way to 2020, but the data unfortunately starts in 1995 only, and that precludes a deeper analysis of the subject, which would also cover a period of where there were particular policies in place. Okay. And also mention some future work that your research is opening up. You may also mention, if any, policy implication, right? Always be very careful. I'm quite, it pisses me off when I see cheap policy implications being reported in papers. Policy is important, right? So do not If there is a policy implication, always be serious in the way that you put these policy implications in your paper. Okay. Appendices are useful. For instance, all those extra regressions, detailed data description, and much else. Well, bury them in the appendix. But you must give your appendix some context as well. You cannot just copy and paste all those extra 1,000 graphs and tables that you have in your do file in the appendix. If you start putting all those things in the appendix, you have also to tell the reader what is that they are doing there, why they are there, what is the purpose of them, right? Finally, references. You have to manage your references well. They must be arranged alphabetically. It's kind of obvious. Must be complete and accurate. Remember, I think I told you last week to download JabRef, which is the software that we are going to be using very soon in order for you to manage your references. Okay. Always check the latest version of the paper you are citing. If you are citing the working paper version, so for instance, in our macro course, we are seeing all those NBR working paper versions of the papers, but some of those papers have already been published by a journal. So always make sure that the papers that you are citing, that you are referencing, are the latest version of it. Let me stop sharing here and see if there are, okay, so now about the, no, so now we can, okay. Folks, questions, comments? All clear? Shall we have a break? A 5-minute break? Yes or no? Please. Okay. Let's have a 5-minute break. Okay, I'm stopping and pausing the record. So there is a question here. What's the oldest our sources can be? You mean sources, data sources, or papers? So as I said, in either way, data. Well, it depends on what is available, really. There are countries with very extensive data sets, which go back a long time. There are other countries which that is not really the case. South Africa is pretty good for macro data, MA, right? All this data on inflation, GDP, financial data, it's pretty good. Right, it goes back. You can get a lot of data. For micro MA data, it's. Is a question?
Sorry, Prof. It wasn't a question. I seem to have unmuted myself by accident. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So for micro MI data in South Africa is much more restrictive. There is this restriction that before 1994 there was very little data being collected on Black people, so we don't know. So there is less data. There is this serious restriction, and there is very little point in trying to understand only 10 or 15% of the population before 1994. So it really depends, folks, on what you have in mind and what sort of data you have. But as I said, for macro data, South Africa is pretty decent, right? Other African countries is it really depends, right? Whether for instance, Kenya has a lot of data, right? Kenya has decent data going back quite a lot in terms of time. But other countries, I wouldn't know. I don't know how good or bad Zim is. I think it's pretty bad right now, right? In terms of data. But Kenya is pretty decent. And then if you get the US or the UK or Germany, then you have a lot of data. Okay. If you get a developed country or a bunch of developed countries, then you have a lot of data. Then data is really not a problem. Okay. So let me, any other question, folks? No? So let me share my screen again. And let me now, tell you a couple of things about your writing, about the way people write, and things that you must really keep in mind. You must follow what is there. Okay. So in terms of keep your paper as short as possible. Short is better. 10,000 words is already a stretch. You don't need to write 10,000 words, and don't even think about going to 11,000 words. So if you can stay with, around 6,000 or 7,000 words, that would be great, right? That's what a good paper usually looks like. So short is better in bold. Avoid repetition. If you say something once, why do you have to say it again? So be clear. When you write, be clear and avoid repeating and repeating and repeating. Again, tell the reader what you do, then compare what you do to what others did. That's the main point. Or tell the reader what is your result, your main result, and what is your contribution. Be precise. Be precise. Right? Paragraph is a collection of sentences, and sentences are collections of words. Simple is better always. A paragraph must have a single point that hangs it together, right? So if you have A, B, B, C, C, D, you need that's what we call transitivity, right? You learn about transitivity in economics in your second year, I'm sure. Right? So a paragraph is, you need paragraphs, and your paragraph must be coherent all the time. Avoid footnotes. Footnotes, a footnote is not a signal of intelligence, right? Students think that footnotes, they look good. No, they don't look good. Avoid footnotes. And why is that you have to avoid footnotes? If something is important, then put it in the main text, right? If something is not important, then it doesn't belong in your paper. That's it, period, right? So avoid footnotes. Footnotes are not signals of intelligence, quite the opposite. If something is important, then that something belongs in your main text. If something is bullshit, then bullshit doesn't belong in your paper. Cut it. Tables should be self-contained in bold. The reader must be able to, we are seeing papers, right? We are seeing professional papers. All those papers have tables, and all those tables, I always keep telling you, all those tables are self-contained. They have notes, and in those notes, you can find all information that you need to understand the table. So the reader must be able to understand the table without going back to the text. And the opposite also holds. The text should be understandable without the tables. But above all, when I read a paper, when I take a paper, when I get a paper to take a look at, right, I will read the abstract. I will probably read the introduction. And then I will start browsing the paper. I will start looking for the tables. And I need the tables because the tables must give me your main result, right? And for me to understand your paper, the tables must be self-contained, okay? Moreover, if you put a table in your paper, then talk about the numbers in there. You are reporting estimates or you are reporting correlations. The same applies to graphs. Tables and graphs are in your paper for a reason. So you must discuss them. You must comment on them. So talk about them, right? Including what is that you have to include in your paper? Well, we are seeing papers in macro. We are going to see papers in research methods, including your table, your traditional R-squared, your F-test, standard errors, sample size, and some residual diagnostics that you learn in econometrics, right? Obviously the estimates themselves. Variables, names must be self-explanatory. If you are writing about unemployment, then name your variable unemployment. And stick with that. Don't call unemployment lack of jobs, lack of employment, lack of opportunity, lack of growth. Call it unemployment, for God's sake. Okay? It's unemployment is unemployment. Do not use different fancy words to describe the same thing. Unemployment, unemployment, and unemployment all over your paper. Do not confuse the reader. About numbers, 2 or 3 significant digits are enough. Those numbers are going to be coming straight from R in your case. 2 or 3 digits, significant digits are enough. Use percentages when talking about the economic effect of your result. We are talking about elasticity, so use percentages. If something increases by 1%, something else decreases by, I don't know what percentage. Talk about your changes in percentages. Use active tense. Assume responsibility. It is your paper, so use I do this, right? Do not write that this paper does that. No, folks, the paper doesn't do anything. You are the one doing things, right? So you write, I do this. In this paper, I do this. Do not write, this paper does this or that. No, your paper is neutral. Your paper doesn't do anything. It's you doing something, okay? Use present tense and keep it consistent, right? Don't start a paragraph in the past and finish it in the future. This is not Back to the Future, or is not a Hollywood movie. You are not traveling to Andromeda, for God's sake, right? This is a professional paper. So a paragraph is always in present tense. You start in the present and you finish the paragraph in the present. You use the normal sentence structure: subject, verb, object. I like beer, right? You can even emphasize, I really like beer, but in science we do not emphasize things. So I like beer, right? I like burgers, things like that. So subject, verb, and object. That's how we write. Avoid jargon and complicated words and be concrete. When I say avoid jargon and complicated words, I say what I'm saying here is, if you are talking about unemployment, you talk about unemployment. Be concrete, be coherent, be solid. Right? Avoid adjectives and adverbs. For instance, words like very, dramatic, striking, sharply. Cut them all out from your paper. You do not use those words in a professional paper. Nothing in science is very dramatic or strikingly exciting. No. You don't use those words in a professional paper. Say what you want to say. Avoid everything that comes before that. Okay. For instance, it's easy to show that, cut the that and this in your paper unless something follows from that. Okay. Remember again, subject, verb, and object. In empirical work, and that's something that we are already seeing in macro, and you are already seeing in metrics. Identification, and more identification. What is your identification strategy? What is the equation that you are going to be estimating, right? Why is the error term uncorrelated with your right-hand variables? That's something that Matt is covering with you. What is the economics of your instruments? What is the exclusion restriction? Are your IVs valid, right? But above all, what is the economic intuition of your results? Right? As I said to you, in your paper, it's not good for you just to say that something went up and something else went down. That is not good, right? So you have to give the intuition, the economic intuition of your results. What is the difference between an instrument and a confounder? Do you have reverse causality? Those are all issues in econometrics that we are going to be seeing very soon. Why are you using those confounders or controls? Explain the economic significance of your result. And then we are back to the point of using percentages. Try to explain your results always in terms of percentages. What is the size of the effect of your result? Why is this important? It is important, folks, because if we give policy prescription, the policymaker is an imbecile. The policymaker is an idiot by definition. So the policymaker relies on you, on your expertise, right, to understand the size of the effect of a particular policy. Okay? So the economic significance is important. It's of paramount importance. Final thought here, folks, it takes as much time and effort to write a bad paper as a good one. It takes a lot of effort to write a bad paper, folks, right? And really, it's not easy to write a bad paper. Believe me, I'm not making a bad use of the language of Shakespeare. It's not an easy thing to write a bad paper, right? So it takes a lot of effort because your supervisor will tell you to do this and that over and over and over again. So at the end of the day, it's going to give you a lot of extra work. It takes a lot of effort to write a bad paper. So why is that you don't make good use of your time? Make sure that you write something worth reading. Simplicity, clarity, and unity, right? And let's try to make this a bullshit-free zone. If you follow the instructions I'm giving you to the letter, hopefully this is gonna happen. We are going to make this a bullshit-free zone. And also, in addition to, you don't have to take my word for that, folks. Please also make sure that you read the papers that we are going to be covering from next week onwards, and also the papers that we have already been covering in macroeconomics. Also, there is a great movie from the 60s, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, with Clint Eastwood, and there is the link there to the it's a 2-minute clip. But essentially, folks, I'm not gonna, you can go there at your own leisure. But essentially, when you are to shoot, don't talk, right? What we are saying here, folks, is go to the point, clear, be simple, simplicity, clarity, unity. Go to the point. Don't try to be clever. We all know you are very clever, right? But don't try to impress the reader with complicated words. Don't try to impress the reader with overcomplicated jargon. Don't try to be smart by using, I don't know how many different words to describe the same thing. Go to the point. When you are to shoot, don't talk. Okay. In terms of some extra references that, in addition to the reference that we discussed last week, again, John Cochrane, Writing Tips for PhD Students. You are not a PhD student, but this applies to all students in the whole universe. If you just click there, you go straight to you can download the paper. I strongly recommend you to read. John Cochrane is a professor of finance at Chicago Booth. Chicago Booth is the business school of the University of Chicago. Hammermesh, The Young Economist's Guide to Professional Etiquette, right? Daniel Hammermesh, he wrote this, I think it came out in Journal of Economic Perspectives back in the 1990s. I'll be with you. So I strongly recommend you to read the Young Economist Guide to Professional Etiquette. Let's see, there is something on the chat. Prof, can you please share the papers that you'll be reading in macro next week? Macro next week. GQ1. And then there is Levine, Dave Levine's cheap advice. Again, if you just press there, I strongly recommend this. He is at Berkeley, and it's very good in terms of how to write papers and how to present and how to conduct yourselves in a professional environment. And then there is Mankiw's How to Write Well. Greg Mankiw is he was the head of department at Harvard, head of Department of Economics at Harvard for a long time. He's a professor of economics at Harvard. So we can still learn from Mankiw. Pishke's How to Get Started on Research in Economics. He's a professor of econometrics, in fact, at the LSE. So again, if you click there, I highly recommend this, right? If you click there, you download the paper straight away. And all these papers, what I try to do here, folks, all these papers were written by Albivio, were written by top people in our profession. And what I did in my notes was essentially to learn from them and to try, and my job here is to convey to you what they are telling us. Chat, yes, please, Prof, it will be easier to follow and make notes. Can we talk about that in a few moments? And what else? Also check the website by Chris Blattman. Chris Blattman is at the Harris School of Public Policy at UChicago. So he is also a top guy in our profession at UChicago. Also, some of the TED Talks, right, are relevant for what we are doing here, particularly the ones by David Deutsch. David he's not an economist, he's a physicist at Cambridge, I think. So that's a great TED Talk, right, about a new way to explain things, which is essentially by using science. And then there is also a talk by Edward O. Wilson. He's a biologist, Harvard biologist. He gives the talk on advice to a young scientist. I really strongly recommend you guys to take a look at all those things. I think it would be a good idea for you to master those notes, right? Those slides, to really follow them, learn them, and follow them. If you want to become a professional economist, I think it would be a great idea if you could really master them and learn them by heart. And then if you don't take my word for those things, take a look at what senior people also recommend. So let's stop sharing, and can you please share the papers that you'll be reading in macro next week? I don't know which papers you'll be reading. I haven't decided yet. Today is Thursday, because I think we are going to see different subjects. I'm planning to do something about, I haven't decided yet, probably about the internet and social media and the rise of populism, the rise of fascism, in fact. I will decide over the weekend, and then I'll ask Cindy to circulate by Monday. Is that all right? Is that acceptable? Yes or no? It must be, folks, because yeah, okay. Questions about research methods? Is that more or less clear? Okay, but wait a moment. The question was, about the papers that you'll be reading for macro, right? Because the papers that you'll be reading, let me share my screen again. The papers that you'll be reading for research methods, that I can already tell you in advance, right? For research methods, you'll be reading Samuel Johnson Robinson. So we are going to see that paper next week, okay? AJR 2001, The Colonial Origins of Comparative Development, which came out in AER back in 2001. It's a kind of old paper, but it's a classical in economics. So all professional economists must read that paper. And then depending on how fast or slow we move, we are going to read a paper by myself, which came out in the Economics of Transition in 2018 about primary education and fertility rates, right? And Economics of Transition is a journal sponsored by the World Bank. So those two papers, we are going to be spending time with those two papers next week and probably the week after, okay? For macro, let me confirm by Monday, okay? Any other question, folks? Comments, suggestions? Yeah, go on. There is, go on, Zoom user.
Afternoon, Professor. I just quickly want to ask, you said we're not going to use Word and we're going to use this JabRef. Will you give us any indication on how to use it, or is it our own endeavor to figure it out?
No. I just want you by now, at this stage, I want you to download JabRef, right? JabRef is a software that we use to manage our references, okay? I want you to download and install in your computer. It's free of charge, right? Download and install in your computer the JabRef, because I will show you how to use JabRef, okay? But it's a references manager essentially, okay? I'm gonna show you that you don't actually need to type your references anymore, right? You are just going to be, I'm gonna show you probably next week or on the week after. But please download JabRef. There is the link in my notes. Download and install in your laptop the software, okay? Because then it becomes easier. Anything else, folks? Go ahead. All clear? All clear? All clear? Okay, folks, then in terms of research methods, we see each other again. I mean, you see me, right? I don't see you. We see, thank you. We see each other again next Thursday, but you already know what we are going to be doing. We are going to be covering those two papers that I highlighted 2 minutes ago. And then we also have to do a bit of JabRef. There are also this stuff about topics, etc., etc. So we still have a number of things to do in research methods, right? Macro, I don't want to discuss too much about macro because I know there are people here who are not doing macro. But I will see which papers are going to cover for next week, and then I'll ask Cindy to let you know which papers so that you can read in advance, which I really doubt you're going to do any advanced reading, but let's assume our null hypothesis, right? Okay, folks, I see you. Yeah, you see me next week. Bye. Take care.